Hey folks, today is the day. Elk Week is officially live on our platforms. All week we're celebrating the animal that fuels our dreams, the elk. So starting today, you're going to find brand new elk hunting videos, exclusive podcasts, fresh elk themed gear across all of our platforms. And we're also launching a new limited edition elk stamp designed by our good friend Lyle Hebel. Every dollar from those stamp sales goes directly to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation to support habitat conservation and elk hunting access. And don't forget, we're giving away a massive gear package worth over $4,000 thanks to our amazing partners. This is just the beginning of Elk Week, so stay tuned and buckle up. Elk Week starts now. Go to the link in the description if you want to sign up for that gear package that is special to Elk Week. Corey, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm great. It's sweltering hot here in the mountains, but other than that, I'm good, yeah.
Well, we have a wonderful guest that took time from his fishing calendar or holiday vacation, Steve Decker. Steve, you're the what now? You're the Chief Revenue Officer at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation?
Yes, and that has nothing to do with accounting, Randy. I know how you would gravitate to that. I didn't choose the title. I was given the title, and really it's just everything outward facing on the fundraising side of the business.
Okay. Well, Corey, you got a title like that at your shop?
No, my wife calls me names from time to time, but no official titles.
Yeah, at my shop, we had a big storm come in yesterday afternoon, and we got these great big willows right next to the office, and our parking lot was full of broken limbs. So I guess that I spent the first 2 hours being this morning. My title this morning was yard maintenance. Just how it goes, I guess. But Steve, thanks for taking time. I know you're on vacation, and I hate to bother you on vacation, but
you got me in my happy place, though, so that's good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're always happy.
I am always happy, but I'm happier when I'm in this undisclosed location.
Okay. Well, undisclosed. Corey, are you in an undisclosed location?
No, but if you saw the mess that was all around me, it looks all nice and tidy here, but everything behind the camera is chaos.
Yeah, well, we've been filming so hard all week. If you could see what's just right over here off my left shoulder, it looks like a yard sale or someone broke into a production facility. There's lights and tripods and cameras, but we're trying to get all of our content ready for Elk Week, which is part of what this podcast is about. It's all things elk. I guess the Elk Talk podcast should be about all things elk. And that's why we have Corey on here, Steve, is for all things elk.
And yeah, to steer Randy when he goes off topic, which happens about 59
that in
times
itself is a
per
full
minute.
time. Yeah, that's a full-time job, Corey.
Yeah, Steve knows that because when I served on the Elk Foundation board for 6 years, Steve had to deal with me going into the ditch while I was on the road every once in a while, or on the board every once in a while.
Into the details, Randy, not the ditch, into the details.
I was going to say, okay. I've ridden with Randy before, and there's some going into the ditch when he's on the road as well.
Yeah, well, Corey and I being the fans we are, and the audience and listeners being fans also of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Steve, we appreciate you taking time. We just want to give people maybe a wider perspective of what the Elk Foundation does and how you guys do it, and just, whatever you want people to know about the Elk Foundation, this is an opportunity to add to it. And I recite that mission statement. I think it's probably going to be etched on my gravestone to ensure the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. That's a mission statement, but it has a practical application of how it applies out in the hills, how it applies in all the things that you guys do.
Yeah, and it's been consistent from the beginning for the most part. Ensuring the future of elk has always been the same. The other wildlife component of that has been consistent. I guess in the beginning it was to raise funds for direct benefit, but ensure the future of has been from early on. And then we added the hunting heritage component of that, just knowing what a vital role hunting plays in conservation, the North American model, how we manage wildlife, how we fund wildlife management in the United States. Um, and from an application perspective, I think our mission programs have stayed very consistent. While some things have evolved, Randy, as you're well aware, when in 80s and 90s, it was habitat, habitat, habitat. I still remember Jack Ward Thomas telling my father and Bob Munson that if you keep it about the habitat, you can't go wrong. I look back on those days actually fondly because it was a lot easier. And our systems around habitat stewardship, ensuring that there's quality habitat, our access programs, our land protection programs are very evolved, very established, fairly unique to us, but they still by and large do the same work that they did, beginning with Robb Creek back in 1988, the first lands project that we ever did. Um, the nuance now is advocacy, and how advocacy plays into it plays an important role in the delivery of our mission. You can't do active forest management, you can't do land protection, you can't really do any of that. In fact, I don't know what we can do in this country anymore without having politics involved. And that's, I'm not saying that is a good thing. I'm actually saying it's probably not. But advocacy is an important part of our mission today, more important today than ever before, and growing as time goes on. And having just some of your recent travels, Randy, you can attest that politics play into some things today.
Oh gosh, yeah,
Well, and the
I'm sure.
advocacy piece of it is, I think that's evolved as well because I spent a lot of time back in the early 2000s or so defending the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation because people were coming out saying they didn't take a stance on wolves. They don't have a stance there. I wish they'd get more involved. And now I think the Elk Foundation kind of leads the way on those important things, whether it's wolves, whether it's public land access, those types of things.
Yeah, you're right, Corey. The issues themselves have evolved, and the tactics of the other side, I think, have evolved. When you see some of the ballot initiatives, ballot box biology, you can call it or reference it, the groups that use those efforts for fundraising for a desired outcome, it's all kind of bundled into one. We were very fortunate last year in Colorado to defeat I think it was I-124, the bobcat mountain lion hunting. That is a new tactic we see more and more in a lot of these states. And we, as a hunter group, need to be organized. And let's be honest, traditionally, hunters spend time talking about rifles versus bows, public versus private. We find 9,000 ways to fight amongst ourselves. And we have this united body that's trying to chip away at our right to hunt. I think we need to think about being a little bit more coalesced in our messaging and in our just protecting the whole of it.
Well, and we've seen that evolve so much just from the wolves in Colorado. I know you guys
Yeah.
had a strong mission to get people out to vote on that, and we saw a lot of apathy there. And something that happened that, I mean, it was the slimmest of margins there, that just a little
Yep.
bit more of involvement and engagement, we would have stopped that. So we see then in the same state, the bobcat and mountain lion issue getting shut down, and then more recently the public lands. I think that sparked hunters to get involved. I've never seen involvement like that from multiple groups of users. But then the problem is we went right back, as soon as we win that, we go right back to attacking and saying, make sure you go and boycott anybody who didn't stand up for this. And it's like, why not reach out and educate them and engage them and get them on our side rather than continue to divide things here?
Right. Yeah. No, we have a tendency. I don't know if I want to say eat our own, but at some level there is a greater tendency towards that. And it's really, when you look at the two, Colorado has evolved just from a political landscape quite a bit in the last couple of decades. If you look at the tactics that were employed around the wolf issue, the reintroduction, there was a lot of based on CPW, based on the science. We were very practical in our argument. The other side tends to use emotion a lot, and with ballot with I-124 and the Bobcat uh, mountain lion issue, we still put out a lot of the practical science, the common sense pieces, but then towards the end, there was also some emotional appeal that appealed to more of that, I hate to say that soccer mom voting block in suburban Denver, which is a huge number of votes. And bringing some realities to what it would mean to have, and what some of California's experienced since they've done, they did away with the similar predator hunting. That's really where we saw the shift in the numbers. And I mean, this went from, I think, 11 or 12 points down to up by 13. That's a massive swing. So learning on our side how to be more effective in messaging, how to put our compelling story out there and aggregate that. I think, we're learning more, if nothing else, in improving our position on that and our outcomes.
Yeah, that was, you guys hosted just a session, I don't know what you'd call it, at SHOT Show in January of that year, Steve, and invited quite a few of us there, and a lot of the policymakers, their lobbyists, a lot of the other groups, and you guys hosted that. And one thing I took away from that was there was a strategic communications group involved. His name was Mark. I'm trying to remember his name. Anyhow, he said, this isn't going to be won or lost. Talking to hunters and ranchers and everybody else. This is going to be won or lost on the front range communities from Colorado Springs to Fort Collins.
Yep.
And we have to craft a message. And I don't know if he was looking at me, but he said, we can't have a bunch of old gray-haired farts being the messengers. And I stood up and said, I can leave now. But he had a very valid point. If we are here to win, the old game of talking to ourselves and having the same message and having the same messengers, we've seen what those results were. And so we tried something different in the Colorado initiative. And when you're talking about things evolving, you use Colorado as an example, but I think the issues evolve, just the impressions and the connection, the reduced connection people have to wild things and landscapes. They don't go to their uncle's farm for a weekend in the summer anymore like they did 40 years ago. So as all that evolves, I'm glad to see us starting evolving as how we are going to communicate and play our hand in this whole game of ballot initiatives, public perception, just all that. And I think it was very effective.
Yeah, it was a great outcome for sure. And I think it demonstrates that even when you look at the political landscape of Colorado, having a win like that there does give us some confidence that, we're in a pretty good place. We have the right message. We have, we stand on facts, we stand on common sense, and a lot of things that, as in politics don't really exist anymore. But the broader public, I think it does still exist. And when we come from that perspective, I think we can have success.
Yeah.
And unite, pull people together. Like, we need to speak more in one voice.
Yeah, I think, Corey, you brought up a good point there. And maybe people are tired of us hammering on it in this podcast, but this fighting and arguing over, I always say lighted knocks, because I remember the lighted knock argument in Montana.
Yeah.
If people would have invested as much time, 1/10 of that time, in going and improving access to elk, we'd have access to every elk in Montana. It was insane. The bloody noses and the scabs and broken limbs that came from arguing about lighted knocks.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it drug on forever.
Yeah. And I mean, Corey, you guys have just went through it. I mean, you got legislators who are circumventing process and stuff. And so hopefully we can start learning some lessons from our own successes and quit that. But yeah, just in the last couple of days, Corey, what you mentioned. I'm getting all these emails. Well, why didn't so and so do this? Why they didn't jump in until blah blah blah? All right,
Well,
I
and
didn't hear any.
I think people just think that everybody's on social media and that's where everybody does their work and their advocacy. And, they
Right,
don't see somebody posting 6 times a day on social media. They think, oh, he's,
right,
doesn't have a spine or doesn't want to stick his neck out. And there's just, I think the
yeah,
encouraging thing that I saw from this latest public lands win was the activation of people utilizing the right channels.
yeah,
It's very common to see people get up in arms on Facebook or on Instagram, but very seldom do they actually make a phone call. And they might sign a form letter and hit send on it. But I think, in my experience, those form letters, as powerful as they are and as good as they are and as easy as they make it, a phone call, just a kind phone call to express your concern to a senator or a legislator or whoever it is in whatever situation has so much more weight. And we saw that this time that
Yeah,
senators did not want to hear another phone call because they were getting absolutely pounded, which is how we get that message through.
we had more than 27,000 comments submitted through our portal to legislatures, uh, to lawmakers in Congress in the last couple of weeks. That's an incredible grassroots activation of individuals expressing their opinion. And Corey, you make a good point. Like there's different forms and styles of advocacy.
yeah,
RMEF, we try to position ourselves as an adult in the room. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way to anyone else, but advocacy is not a fundraising program for us. I'm responsible for the fundraising at the Elk Foundation and all of it. We do not look at advocacy as a form of fundraising. We will not march on a Capitol, wave banners, call lawmakers names, throw people under the bus. We look at a desired outcome and we try to have common sense, calm conversations representing our stakeholders for our desired outcome. Because we don't depend on it for fundraising, we don't take issues and try to manipulate them or use them for our own benefit. We truly look at what is the outcome that our stakeholders want and how do we best navigate to that. And I can assure you, taking a governor or a senator and just blasting them on your social media does not help you get a meeting where you can sit down and have a realistic and calm conversation about your constituents or your stakeholders' desired outcome.
Yeah, and I think
And we are disciplined to that.
a lot of times we, as a social media using body, think that the president of the United States, all the senators are following our timeline and seeing our feed and seeing our comments. And even if you tag them, I mean, you look at Mike Lee and how many times he was tagged on Instagram, it was a lot. But I guarantee you he's not going through and reading those comments. He doesn't care what social media says. But his office recording that there were 7,500 phone calls in a day saying they oppose this public lands, that's a record that they've got to at least recognize.
Right.
yeah. And the other part is, I think as more and more people gain their, if you want to call it information, I don't want to call it news. Gain bits and pieces that form their opinions on social media. They think that's the only sphere that is in play. Like I had somebody light me up and say, "Oh, you're a Johnny come lately to the public land thing." And
Yeah, yeah.
I go and look at this person's profile, and I don't think they're more than 24 or 25. So, okay,
No.
that's fine. But I politely sent a message. I said, if you go follow my other channels like YouTube and my Hunt Talk Forum, blah, 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 I've been in this game for 20 years. And the person replied, well, that's because you're old and you don't know where it's really happening.
Yeah.
Okay. But when I go to legislatures or Congress or get invited to meetings, where it's really happening in a lot of places is, I don't want to make it sound like it's backroom deals, but you get invited to meetings because you deal in facts and truth. If you aren't dealing in facts and truth, you'll get carved out of that sooner or later. The only currency that we as a community really have is truth and facts, and
Right.
our commitment to what we say we're going to do. So I get that, and social media. I've never had my social media platforms blow up the way they did the last 10 days.
Yeah.
I the guys were all on vacation on Friday and Saturday. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. I got a, I wouldn't call it a master class. I graduated kindergarten or Instagram for kindergartners because I had to do my own videos and caption them and everything. Uh, but, but that really was a mechanism for leveraging people based on what I knew to be factual, based on what I knew to be the real uh, risks and possibilities. But there is so much that happens outside of social media. And there's always this criticism of, well, why aren't they on social media saying this? Or why aren't they that? And I always tell a lot of people, I'm like, well, that group or this group or whatever group, I see them. I'm on calls with them or on calls with their lobbyists. I know they have relationships. They have people working every day of the week on this stuff. They're just not out there making a big scene of it. But in today's world of social media, everyone thinks that's where actual, if you want to call it, deals are struck or negotiations are made, whatever term you want to put to it. Yes, social media brings a ton of pressure to elected officials. It can if leveraged properly. But what you said earlier, Steve, if we use social media as a tool to say that dirty, rotten, no good for nothing, him or her, you're not going to be invited to those meetings. You're not going to be at the table after doing that enough times.
Right.
I think social media is wonderful for spreading the message, getting people
Yep.
fired up, getting the troops rallied, but then
Yeah.
just resharing or reposting a message on social media does nothing other than spread the message further. But there's an action that has to happen that I think we've missed in the past that we got this time. That yes, I'm going to share this post. Yes, I'm learning from Randy's Instagram videos, but now I'm going to actually pick up the phone and make a phone call and find out who my senator is, make a phone call and say, hey, I don't agree with this. And I think that was a huge step forward for us in, using social media to spread the message and to rally the troops, but then getting everybody to actually engage and take a step that makes a difference in, the right channel.
Yeah, you're right, Corey. The phone call and email thing for politicians, those are coming from voters and they can quantify the number.
Yep.
And when an office hits a certain number, they take notice. Like they are 100% on point. What's going on and how do I make decisions here? And that's where a lot of times they'll call, and we get calls asking what's really going on. Like,
No.
what is the true sentiment here, and what is the best what's the best outcome? And you're right, and I think social media also, politicians are using red herrings there as much as anything. Like, hey, let's send everybody over here chasing this while I go work on this over here because they're distracted with that.
Mhm.
Our current president's very good at that. He throws something out there, media, everybody jumps all over it. Meanwhile, something completely different is going on over here.
Yeah. Well, I get to do this enough that I in without I'm just gonna say it this way. When I'm on calls, the people in the groups who are often there, Steve, if one of your people like Blake or Ryan aren't on that call, you guys have somebody on that call.
Right.
If Tony from Boone and Crockett isn't on the call, they have somebody on that call. If Gray or Keith from Wild Sheep can't be on the call, they have somebody on the call. And then usually you guys are all polite enough to connect me to your people who you have working on big issues in DC, and like, Randy, call them. They'll give you a little bit more insight. And so just because it's not happening on social media doesn't mean things aren't happening. I
Yeah.
mean,
Correct.
advocacy, the most effective advocacy sometimes for groups or organizations can sometimes be just meetings and face to face and the relationships that you've built over time.
For sure.
And
Yeah,
so,
100%. And
And
your
there's,
reputation.
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
If the Elk Foundation's reputation could be summarized, and I always say this, is the success that I saw when I was on the board is the Elk Foundation, if they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. You can trust that if RMEF says this is what we're going to do, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, that was instilled in us in the beginning. If you know our beginnings and where we came from, um, I think one thing that we will always take pride in is the fact that we've done what we said we would do, and we continue that. We'll never stray from that. We're no better, no worse. Like, we come from pretty humble beginnings. We've been fortunate to grow as an organization and have the impact that we have, but that's through a coalescing of support from a broad spectrum of people across the country that afford us the opportunity to deliver our mission at the level that we do. We take it very seriously. We are the stewards of everyone's investment. I don't care if it's $35 or $3.5 million. It's our responsibility to spend that money in pursuit of our mission to the best and most efficient way that we possibly can. And we'll always, I always see us being guided by that. And again, if you don't, if your word isn't worth anything, you're in real trouble.
Yeah. Well, the other part of advocacy, we're just focusing on the land sale thing from Mike Lee in the last couple of weeks. But when I was on the board, Steve, there were times I think people thought it was the Randy Newberg Elk Foundation. Having my phone number in the phone book while I was on that board, I had to eventually get rid of my landline. Boy, people are really quick to tell you what they think, and that's great. Now, they're members or they're donors or they're just elk hunters, and that's all great. And I tried to field every one of those calls. The one thing that maybe I observed from it is if I got a call from somebody in Montana, they thought it was the Montana Elk Foundation. And if I got a call from somebody in New Mexico, they thought it was the New Mexico Elk Foundation. And if I got a call from somebody in Oregon, they thought it was the Oregon Elk Foundation. Well, why aren't you guys on this? Well, why aren't you
Right.
guys that? And I try to explain to them, like, we have a mission, we got to stick to it. And what you guys have for issues in Oregon are different than what are in Montana or New Mexico or Colorado. And as quick as the Elk Foundation would jump in on one issue in Montana, it might put them completely contrary to how the hunters in New Mexico feel on that same issue. And so when you start choosing these sides within every state or every
Yeah.
committee, I'll hear people say, well, I talked to this committee volunteer and they couldn't answer my question for me. Well, no, they're a volunteer. And so there's a reason and a purpose for the Elk Foundation operating the way they do, being as successful as you are, and sticking to what those principles are that got you here. And it's not by jumping in and being the Montana Elk Foundation today and the New Mexico Elk Foundation tomorrow, sticking to this foundational base that benefits every place where elk live and every
Yeah.
place hunters exist.
Ironically, even still today, what Jack Ward Thomas said early on, if you make it about habitat, you'll never go wrong. It's still true today. We have this added layer of complexity of federal issues,
Mm-hmm.
state by state issues. To your point, very different in New Mexico, Utah, Oregon, Kentucky, Tennessee. But at the end of the day, if we don't have habitat to sustain these elk and big game herds, if we don't have access to them, then it's kind of a mute conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, think about if our public lands were all inaccessible to hunting, would we have been successful in this last little selling public lands debate? No,
Yeah.
people are passionate about it because they have a connection to it. They
Right.
recreate there, they hunt there, they spend time there, and that's what connects them to it and makes them so passionate about defending them. And that's one of the greatest assets that we have is people's connection to hunting, people's connection to those lands. They will defend it. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I do out of need for work, not from a recreation perspective. But the amount of passion that I saw come out in people, like true raw passion and connection to those lands, that issue was going to be successful because people, to Corey's point, they picked up the phone, they made phone calls, they got engaged, and it was a positive outcome. But all of that's connected, and
Yeah.
you can't give a break in that connection, you have a problem.
Yeah. Corey,
And
did
we're
we?
not perfect. Like Randy, I'll tell you, like we are fortunate to have evolved our habitat mission and our access and stewardship as solidly as we have, because we're never going to be perfect in advocacy. There are going to be issues that people think we don't defend enough, because to your point, we may have people, non-resident elk hunting tags is one that we get residents in certain states calling us, we get non-residents calling us.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we hope that everybody can have access to get out and enjoy the opportunity to hunt elk, whether you're a resident or non-resident. Those are regulated by the states. But again, if we lose access, if we have no elk, if we have no habitat to sustain them, we have no land to sustain them, the conversation is over.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate to be able to fall back on those 40-year, 41-year-old mission delivery programs and permanent land protection and creating access, improving access, and stewarding the land to ensure that it possesses quality habitat so we can have all these arguments.
Yeah. Corey, did we lose you there for a second?
He was in
Man,
and
yep.
out.
I'm
Steve.
dropping and coming back in. Our internet here in the summer, we get bombarded with visitors, and our
Oh.
internet up here just gets drained, and the bandwidth is tapped into, and so yeah.
Hmm. Steve was just laying down a bunch of gold. You'll have you'll have to listen to the podcast to hear what Steve just said, Corey.
I look
I'm
forward
afraid. I'm
to it.
afraid he was getting really bored. He said, "To heck with it, I'm getting out."
Well, I hope from all this people get a feel for the approach that RMEF takes, why you've been so successful. Because if you look at the current scorecard, what is it in terms of acres of habitat conserved? Is it over 10 million?
Impacted over 9 million now.
Okay.
We're rapidly approaching 10 million acres, and we're pretty disciplined in that count. Those are actual walk-on acres. We don't play any games with that. Again, something where I'd rather be under a little than ever go over and have to try to
Yeah.
defend something we didn't do. But we are coming up on 10 million. And that's a makeup of stewardship. I think over 13 or 14,000 stewardship projects now, land protection and access projects all accumulate to, you know, it's over 9, but I'm a marketing guy, so I say almost 10, which sounds better.
Okay, but the other thing this is was I always emphasized when I was on the board is RMEF and partners. You
Yes.
always made sure that you said and partners because you have so many critical partners that you have to work with.
Yeah, for sure. Whether it's federal agencies, state agencies, and industry as well. We have a myriad of industry partners. It's kind of cool. Last year at the 40th anniversary, we celebrated, Weatherby, Loophole, Browning, companies that have been with us literally from the very beginning. I have that premier issue of Bugle with those old ads in them. Those companies invested in a truly unknown entity in 1985, 1984, of 84, I guess. And they're still with us today. It's awesome. Like, industry support has been huge, part of helping us deliver the mission at the level that we have. And, there's private entities, other NGOs, and again, as I referenced, federal and state agencies that all kind of make things come together for us.
Yeah, well, that's I guess that's the benefits of having a mission and sticking to it and doing what you say you're going to do. The other part of that is other wildlife. And I remember when projects would get scored, So this is the other thing. Some people think that this project gets approved because Fred's a good friend to somebody, Farmer Fred there, he knew somebody, so his project got approved. No, you guys go through a very meticulous scoring system about all these things, all the mission related things. And I was fascinated to see the analysis of the other wildlife that the land project managers would provide about a project that was being considered. And that added a lot of weight to whether or not a project got approved.
For sure. And actually, Randy, you're kind of touching on something you're going to see a lot more from us moving forward. And other wildlife is, how do you define other wildlife? Well, we've got with our board and we've really honed in on that. And specifically, what we're talking about is big game. So, other big game species. We're not pollinators, we're not butterflies, we're not going to be distracted by what maybe some other entities believe are priority. That's not who we are. I'm not saying butterflies aren't important. I'm just saying for us, it's not going to be a guidepost. Elk will always be our pinnacle, and we will always represent elk. But within that habitat, you understand there's white-tailed deer, there's mule deer, there's moose, there's other big game species that benefit significantly from the work that we do. We're going to be more cognizant in recognizing that and actually targeting that. In fact, in the last year, if you look at East Canyon in Utah, land acquisition access project we did last year with the state of Utah, that is a critical mule deer migration corridor. Yes, it has elk, and elk scored as a part of that, but we're actually looking at that formula and noting that that was a highly developable area that would have imperiled that mule deer herd, and it would have, elk probably would have been impacted significantly, but not as severely as mule deer. We went forward with that project, and that was a $1.3 million investment from us to close the gap at the end to make that happen for the state. There's a similar one happening in northern Nevada right now, all checkerboard. It's called the Windermere Project. We hope to complete by the end of this year. Roughly, it's all checkerboard. It's going to be about 17,000 acres, I believe, of wide open access to the number 2 largest mule deer herd north end of the Rubies there. And the state says if that were ever to be lost or divided, that mule deer herd would be gone.
Yeah.
So our impact on big game more broadly, and also as we look at expansion across the United States, our elk restoration programs in the East have been very successful. There's huntable herds in the East. Kentucky, I think, is the 7th largest elk population in the country now. Those elk are dispersing. But we want to apply more mission. We have states that support us out there. We want to expand our mission and recognize that there's more work that we can do, specifically in access. Some of the programs that we've evolved over the years can be effective in places in the eastern United States around those elk zones as well.
Well, that's a good, to me, a good idea. Just because all wildlife needs everyone's shoulder to the wheel.
Yeah.
And, the the habitat of all of them are affected by development, affected by so many things, and if the Elk Foundation can help bring access for hunters to elk, usually it also brings access to mule deer hunters for mule deer or pronghorn
Yeah.
hunters for pronghorn, and so that approach, I think, is gonna, well, it has served RMEF well and probably will continue serving it well.
Yeah, those are foundational for us and will remain for the foreseeable future. Our daily challenge as a staff is how do we accelerate? How do we continue to grow the delivery of our mission? Just continuing evolution and continuing to grow it. The programs are still very viable, and we're delivering as much mission today as we ever had. We're very fortunate to be in a better financial position than we've ever been, which allows us to continue to invest on more landscape level impacts.
Steve, what about other species of elk like Roosevelt, Thule? Is there a weight there? I mean, obviously the majority of the elk in the nation are Rocky Mountain elk, but how do you prioritize or look at those projects?
Yeah, certainly. When we look at, you reference Thule and Roosevelt's have pretty unique challenges, each unique, but they have unique challenges. And that's where we do look at things more specifically, like our mission program folks on the ground, Washington, Oregon, Northern California, where those two species exist. We'll be more specific in looking at what applications, what projects are we funding. The highest need for Roosevelt's is different than the highest need for Thule's, which in what many parts of the country is different than what Rocky Mountain elk would do. So forming regional priorities, geographic priorities for, like, how are we applying best mission to benefit those subspecies. But yes, we do pay attention to that for sure.
Yeah, no, as I've hunted Roosevelt a handful of times and looked into Thule and just the like you said, the different issues that they each face are so drastically different. I mean, habitat's completely different for each of them. Some of the disease and health of the herds is different. And then, of course, access is different in those three
Yeah,
regions, I guess.
yeah, you found out those Thule elk aren't over the counter.
Yeah, it's odd. I drove all the way to California and was going to buy a tag at Walmart, and they said, no, they don't sell them. So, but yeah, we need to increase the size of that pie, because that is we're going to go.
It's
Yeah,
a slim slice for sure. We are doing our best. Thule, that's a unique subspecies, and they do have unique challenges and needs, but our folks in Northern California are doing what they can for sure.
Yeah.
So Corey lives in you do too, Steve. The two of you live in what I would call former elk glory lands. That productive land management, whether it's due to litigation, whether it's due to general trends in, trade and lumber and timber and everything.
Cottonwood.
Yeah, some court decisions. How can RMEF, or how can members, or how can our audience play a role in getting some of those former glory lands, like northern Idaho, northwest Montana? We used to shoot 3,500 bulls per year in northwest Montana, and now the stated population objective isn't even 3,500 total elk. All because of everyone wants to blame it on this and this and this, but it comes back in a lot of ways to what you mentioned, is habitat. Is a huge part of it. We've over 30, 40 years, you just see progressively less productive habitat. Yes, there's a huge amount of predation concerns there. Is there a role that members and any of us can play in where RMEF is trying to bring that?
Randy called me last week or the week before and said, would you come on the podcast? I said yes, and I said, but we can't go down a rabbit hole. And there's Randy right on the verge of taking me down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to stay. Right now, I think, Randy, the number one thing that, from RMEF's perspective, we are working to forward the Fix Our Forests Act. And I believe that your constituency, our stakeholders, can call just like they called on public land sale. We need to improve public land management in North Idaho, all of Idaho, Western Montana, other parts of the country for sure. Yes, predators are a significant issue. We have out my door here, there are grizzlies, wolves, mountain lions. They are higher numbers than they've ever been. Growing up in the very northwest corner of this state, in Montana, we had wolves when I was a young kid, and I was born and raised in northwest Montana. My father was born and raised in northwest Montana. With the Canadian border, they had always been a part of the mix there, but I'm just going to say they were managed. They were managed not formally, but they were managed by the people that lived there.
Yeah.
But the conversion of habitat that I've seen over the last 30 years, and full disclosure, I grew up in a logging family. My family has logged in northwest Montana since the early 1900s. But the transition of habitat that I've seen and the degradation of habitat, the lack of active management, to me is one of the most significant factors. And say, oh, well, fire has taken over. But no, fire is catastrophic now. The replacement species, the replacement grasses are knapweed. Now we have leafy spurge. There is a massive gap in quality of habitat on our public lands. And we have to fix that. We have to change equal access to justice. We need to evaluate and have some common sense around ESA. We have to look at NEPA. Like we, it is just a different time and a different place. What's in place is not working. Wildlife is suffering. In this little valley I'm in right now, I can take a drive this evening and right at dark, I can see off the highway 300 to 400 head of elk that are all living within a half mile of the highway with millions of acres of public land on either side. All of those elk are down on private land because there's grass, there's no predators, and a few cars running by on the highway is less of a threat and better groceries than they have if they go a mile and a half up the hill. That's just what it is.
It
Yep.
is. And,
And we're seeing that they're migrating to private land, and then they're staying there because they got everything they need in the winter. They got everything they need in the summer, and they've got protection and safety throughout the year. And if they leave that, none of that's guaranteed anymore. And
Yeah,
we drove back from the Total Archery Challenge this last weekend in Red Lodge, Montana, and went through Bozeman and Butte and up into Missoula, and then came down the Lochsaw. And that was kind of, that was my backyard growing up. I spent a lot of time on the Lochsaw and Selway and shed hunted it in the late 80s, early 90s into the mid 90s, and then saw what happened from the mid 90s into the early 2000s. And it was a perfect storm of everything hitting. I mean, you're talking late 80s, early 90s, the regulation on logging that turned the habitat tide so that there wasn't nearly the productive habitat. You had a black bear population that was exploding and out of control, and they were killing 80 to 85% of the elk calves in the spring. You had wolves that got turned loose in 1995 that started in the late 90s taking that impact. And then the winter of, I think it was 95, 96, 96, 97, right in there. That it just, that winter, the winter kill was super hard. The bear population had exploded and was super hard on the population of elk. The habitat was poor, and they have a hard winter that comes in and just crushes them. And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of hungry wolves show up looking for food, and they just weren't able to recover. And all of those
yeah,
factors are still in place and holding that population from being able to recover.
that's right. And I think what we just witnessed in the last 2 weeks, people stepping forward and saying there are public lands, we own them, don't sell them, Mike Lee, or they took ownership in it. My hope is that they continue the conversation, take pride in ownership, continue to call. Like let's create and advocate for better habitat. Like let's be responsible for the lands, not just segregate them. And Randy, you have a long-term philosophy of how people become disconnected from these lands. Are we going to care as much about them in the future to protect them from being sold? We still have an obligation or responsibility to steward of those lands. And I would love to see this momentum continue because people did stand up and say, damn it, they're ours.
Yeah.
They're staying ours. Okay, then let's continue the conversation.
Yeah. I've done 2 interviews with national media in the last 2 days. And it's without getting into all the details of the stereotype they have of a hunter. They're just like, why would a hunter like you be leading, this just really passionate charge for public lands? We thought you guys were all a bunch of this. And I'm like, my point to them, and I don't know if it'll get made, is we want productive lands and we want access to those lands. They're hand in hand. And, a lot of people smarter than me have said, maybe instead of arguing over where we can get access that elk have moved to, like you're talking about the private lands. And Corey, I know where you live in Idaho, it's a private land thing. how about we start improving the habitat on the places we do have access to so that the elk want to be on these public lands? Right? It can be that can be the way the equation flows also.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's I think what you guys get at RMEF is you have all this, productive landscape management that you're trying to work on and working with all kinds of different partners. And you said full disclosure, Steve, that you come from a logging family. Well, Corey and I have to make that disclosure pretty much every other podcast that we both come from the same backgrounds. But
Right.
I do think that if you're going to try have elk in the heavily forested places of northwest Montana, northern Idaho, maybe even places in Oregon, you have to start thinking about the impacts that lower quality habitat has had on where elk are located.
For sure.
It's just that simple. And I think in the long term, we'd be better off with a long-term plan that says, all right, how do we make this better elk habitat? And
it's proven. Like, there was a time when these public lands held most of the elk.
Yeah.
It was a better proposition for elk to live on public land in northwest Montana than hang out down by the highway in the rancher's field.
Yeah.
Something has, and it's a myriad of things that have shifted. I think Corey summed it up the best, that perfect storm. And we've never really repaired the perfect storm. We have the ability to manage wolves now. Hopefully some point we'll have the ability to manage grizzly bears in the near future. All of that stuff has to occur in balance. But at the end of the day, again, I'll go back to Jack Ward Thomas, habitat. If we don't have the habitat, I'm not sure we're having a functioning conversation.
Well, and I think, what we saw, we talked about just the engagement of hunters. It's really similar with predators. They go on social media and complain, wolves have ruined my hunting area. But most of those people that are complaining don't even buy a wolf tag, don't spend more than, 2 hours trying to hunt wolves and become an active part of the solution. So I really hope, I think that if there was a message in the last couple of weeks, it is social media is great. You can complain, you can rally troops, you can do all that, but you've got to personally take it upon yourself to do something. And posting on social media isn't the thing that's going to move the needle. It's going out and, saying, you know what? I take 2 weeks off for elk hunting in the fall, or I take a week off for elk hunting. I'm going to take a week off in the winter or in the spring, and I'm going to go and dedicate that week to hunting wolves. And, you look at the harvest of wolves in Idaho, Montana, whatever, the annual harvest, you double that number in a season, it wouldn't take a whole lot to double it. But if you double it, it makes a huge impact on the elk. So,
Yeah. And we oftentimes run past mountain lions and the impact of mountain lions.
Yeah.
Mountain lions are the silent killers. And I remember growing up in this country, and if you cut a lion track in a hunting season, you stopped and looked. It was like, holy crap, that's a mountain lion track.
Yeah.
I don't go out on a hunt now without seeing a mountain lion track. In fact, it's not uncommon to see a mountain lion in a hunting season. That's another one that's out there every day, pecking away. We have fewer guys with hounds now because they hate to lose their dogs to wolves. Like, that's another whole complex thing. There's still a few guys running and be effective in cat hunting. We all know dogs are a big part of that. But that's another one. Like, we can only sustain so many predators.
Yeah.
That, whether it's wolves, mountain lions, black and grizzly bears, all have an impact on elk recruitment in those numbers. But habitat's a critical piece of the equation too.
Yeah. I'm over here smiling because if Corey would have heard me promise you, Steve, that I wouldn't lead you down any rabbit holes,
I would have.
Corey would have laughed out loud and said, "Wait a second."
Well, if I get a pink slip on Monday, I'll maybe come to work as a podcast or something. But
Andy,
again,
Randy goes down more rabbit holes than Alice.
Steve, we always say the audience listens to this podcast for the same reason that they watch NASCAR. They're just waiting for a wreck. And they,
we're
they don't
about
know.
the third lap here, and there's a pile up on turn 2.
Yeah, but shifting to membership, we'll start moving this back underneath your
Okay.
your responsibility.
Yeah, let's talk about something I actually do.
Yeah, membership, 220,000 ish, something like that.
Yeah, we run in that low 200,000s for the most part, pretty consistently throughout the year.
Yeah, and that's not 500,000 because when I was on the board, I remember we were like, well, why aren't we at 300,000? And anyone listening to, I get this comment all the time. Would you tell them to quit sending me mailing labels?
Send
like,
more.
Yeah. So I try to explain to him, I'm like, you don't understand. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and probably some of the other large peer groups, membership is a business center. It is run with accountability, with goals, with profitability, because profitability becomes money employed towards mission. And I still remember, I think it was you who said to whatever board member, might even been me, who asked that, why aren't we at 300,000 members? And the answer was, well, we don't want to go broke just trying to hit an arbitrary number, because we want as many members as we can that allow us to maximize the revenue we have to employ towards mission. And if that sweet spot is 150,000 or that's 400,000 or wherever in between, we want to be where it makes sense, not just some arbitrary number.
Right. And there's a metric you can look at. So we represent elk. Elk is a keystone species that is in our name. There's roughly 1 million elk hunters every year that are licensed, maybe just over. So we have about 20%, 21, 22% market penetration in elk hunters that are actually writing us a check to be a member. If you look at other groups and proportionate, even if you go like NRA in its heyday of gun owners, they were maybe 6%. A lot of groups run in that 4 to 6% of their given constituency that are. So from that perspective, I feel like we're kind of outpunting our coverage. Like, we really are in a good place with that market. Certainly we can grow members. Direct mail is a form of art and science. Like, the more mail you send, you have a optimal response rate that you want to live in. You can spend more money, get a lower response rate, go to a further demographic and get the numbers, but you're just throwing money after foolishness. Like, it doesn't really do anything. Now, we're also seeing an evolution. As I've looked at this over the years, there is a lot of people that support us in different ways. So when we count our members, about 45% of the people that attend our banquets are what we call members, because they're on file as a member of what we count in that 200,000. You and your wife go to our banquet and you're a member. That's one member. That's the only way we count that. So when you start looking at 100,000 people going to our events, about 60,000, 55,000, we never talk about them. We don't include them in that count. So really when you look at members and supporters as a whole, there's people that participate in our sweepstakes online. There's people that buy retail products from us. They're not members. That number is much, much larger in a annual basis of people that have some meaningful transaction with us. And I'm fine with that. Like, if you want to wear a hat and a t-shirt and support the organization that way, that's great. And we're seeing in these next generations behind us, gray-haired folks, Randy, as you coined us, they look at things differently. They engage with us on social. They do buy t-shirts and hats. They may go to a banquet. They may not be a member. That's okay. They're engaged. They're a part of the solution. So we're really kind of widening our lens, even how we look at that. And we're like most nonprofits. We're kind of steeped in this old direct mail model. I can tell you, I don't like depending on the United States Postal Service as a part of our business. Not, no disrespect, but they're not the most efficient or effective entity in the world.
And they aren't getting cheaper.
Doing more, yeah, they're not getting cheaper. In fact, July is another 15% hit. Doing more and more online, more and more web, digital platforms. You guys are involved in one of those projects with us. It's just a different form of engaging folks and really reducing our reliance on what is a pretty antiquated process. I can tell you with tariffs, when you have knives and things that you source as premiums, you have just increased postage, increased shipping, um, increased paper prices. All of it is more expensive today than it's ever been. So we're trying to shift our model as we move forward. We have a good plan in front of us. We're taking progressive steps to that, but that may be deeper into the business side of this if you want to go,
Now
Randy.
Steve's going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well,
I won't.
this is the stuff I'm heavy into right now. So.
Yeah. No, I want people to understand how RMEF really looks at it. And I think a lot of people will be surprised where you count what I would say is the lowest common criteria, a paid membership.
Yes.
It doesn't count, I bet you of those 27,000 people that sent emails and made phone calls last week, I bet you a lot of those weren't members.
That's right. And I'll have that number when I get back after the vacation here. We want to obviously look at who is engaging with us in that form. And again, do they convert to becoming a member? Do they buy a hat or a t-shirt? How do we get them to support the organization for the output of our mission? And we operate RMEF like a business. The whole 501c3 charitable, that's a filing status with the IRS. We run it like a business. Our product is our mission. Our goal is to deliver as much mission as we possibly can in the most effective and efficient way that we possibly can. So that's our approach to it. We're not an agency. We don't tax people. We can't just force people. We earn the money that people invest in us, and they trust us to do the best that we can with it. We take that as serious as anything we do every day, all day.
Well, you guys do a great job at it, Steve. I know I'm biased because when I sat through all those board meetings and asked all those stupid questions of the staff, I was impressed every time with the answer. As someone who's a CPA for 30-some years and advised a lot of clients, RMEF is a very sophisticated organization that has its strategic plan that it follows, has all of its systems in place, and there's not a lot of deviation from what the plan is.
We stick to our plans for sure. Yeah. And we spend a lot of time developing those plans. We do member surveys. We do get input from our constituency, our stakeholders. At the highest level, that's what steers the organization, what their expectations are of us. And we try to formulate those into the best delivery plans that we can. Now, again, nothing's perfect. We just we show up every day and we work hard. That's, I don't think I'm the sharpest tool in the shed, but I will say I'm there early. I leave late. I do it every day. I love what I do. I believe I'm blessed to be able to do what I get to do. And I take very seriously those investments.
Yeah.
And all of our staff do.
Yeah. What else is on that survey that pops up that we haven't touched on yet?
The member survey?
Yeah.
Like the 19% that come through Randy Newberg?
That's not what I was talking about. But
advocacy, access, stewardship, and hunting heritage are really the four things that are probably the highest rated. Advocacy and public lands and access, or land protection and access, are the two highest expectations that come in from our surveys. That's what the basic member expects from us. And then that habitat stewardship piece is always right close behind it with hunting heritage.
Well, you guys just put out a video about a project you did in Corey's backyard. Corey's going to be mad at me for ratting out his hunting spot.
I don't hunt close to home, so you're all right.
Elk Mountain.
Yeah. I mean, how appropriately named, right? I mean,
yeah. And these are those cool little projects. I think it was 17 acres that was, on a road wedged in 17 acres with about 7,000 acres of BLM that was inaccessible behind it. We did that you talk about partners. Eric Siegfried on X could not have happened without specifically Eric, but then Onyx as well. And then Steel Chainsaw, some other partners came in and helped us with this. But we secured that piece, actually put a parking lot in. There's an irrigation ditch there. Had to build a walking bridge over it, put that in. But it's one of those like a Red Hill in Montana, some of those little 20, 17, 15 acre pieces of some overlap that create really, really great access to quality land. And we're always looking for those.
Yeah. Well, there's other ways that you guys do a lot that doesn't count on your scorecard either. I was helping one of my clients for 20 years try to donate an easement to the United States government. The public had crossed their ranch for years with permission, with a sign that says you're crossing private property. We're going to let you do that again this year. And the family's theory was, you know what? The public needs to have access to their land. It's really hard to give the Forest Service an easement. I found that out. To the point where the client said, Randy, we're kind of running out of patience here. You know, we told you as long as we were here, we'd let you work on this and try to solve it, but we're kind of running out of patience. So I called Blake, I called your people and said, guys, here's my dilemma. And one of your people made some calls within the Forest Service, and all of a sudden a Forest Service person called me and said, hey, this is crazy. We got to solve this. And it took that person a year and a half to help me solve it, but we got it solved. And, you know, if ever that ranch would have changed hands with the trends that are going on, you know, most people buy it and close it off. 90 sections of public land.
Oh, wow.
Went across that ranch. Now we'll go on across that ranch forever.
Right.
Because we did get it solved. But again, that's an RMEF thing that you guys, how do you put that on a score sheet, right? You guys help the landowner do a private transaction to improve public access of that amount. And so we could sit here and rattle off a bunch more of them. But people probably be like, you guys are making this stuff up. But
I mean, yeah, I think we're guided more about the positive outcome than the score sheet. And I think sometimes, you know, I think about 9 million acres. It's hard even to put that into context. It's all over the United States. At the end of the day, I know that it's made a positive impact. I know there's about 1.6 million acres that are more accessible or just accessible because of the work that we do. It's cumulative and it adds up. It's one of those things, if you go in and you grind every day and we continue to grind, the positive outcomes will accumulate. The score sheet will take care of itself. We don't really focus that much on that. You know, you're forced to in some pieces and parts as you're introducing people to what you do and what you represent as an organization. But from a pure staff perspective, we're looking at the individual outcomes of the projects that we do. That gets, again, added to the cumulative behind it. But making an impact in projects that make a difference are what's important. It could be 9 million acres of something we would never touch, see, feel, or doesn't matter. It wouldn't mean anything. Like, what is the individual impact of the project? Can people stand on it, put their hands in the dirt and get them dirty? That's each one has that kind of tangibility to it.
Yeah, as you mentioned, 1.6 million acres there. And Randy and I talked last week on the last episode about, you know, how many acres of habitat have been improved or access has been improved, over 1 million acres. All of that could have been gone. 40 years of effort could have been gone with the stroke of a pen last week. Like, that's, you know, and I guess that just comes down to how important our united voices are to protecting something that we're passionate about. And public lands, in that case, elk hunting, I think for most people listening to this podcast, you know, we've got to be involved. We can't be the generation that sits back and just has apathy and waits for things to happen and then complains about it. We've got to be proactive. And I think that's so encouraging to see how proactive people are becoming about what they're passionate about.
For sure. And it does make a difference. Like, being engaged collectively as a community does matter. and it's been proven twice now. Again, I'll go back to, I hope it doesn't stop here. There's a reason why there's individuals in this country that think some of our private lands are disposable.
Some of our
Let's take
public
pride
lands.
as owners.
Yeah.
We're all collectively owners.
Yeah.
Let's improve it. Let's continue this journey of not only saying they're important, but let's prove that they're important.
Yeah. And that leads into, something that Randy and I get every once in a while. I think most of our listeners are supporters of what we do, but when you're out advocating for more hunters, you're trying, I mean, we encourage people to go elk hunting. And at some point that puts more boots on the mountain, and that takes away from the existing pie. And so, I think we get a little bit of heat once in a while of, you're the reason there's so many people at the trailhead, and you're the reason that there's no elk and all that. You look at 200,000 plus members of the Elk Foundation. Certainly you guys probably hear that you've encouraged a lot of people to become elk hunters, and you talk about access, but your access isn't keeping up with the numbers. Where do we draw the line? I guess for me, it's always been, I would much rather hunt fewer elk and have 10 people standing with me when a fight comes up than be standing alone and unable to protect a gold mine.
Yeah, you're right. And we do hear about, especially post COVID, it's ironic that the hunting industry, the states, the companies invested, I don't know how much in the previous 30 years in hunter recruitment, retention, and it was a continual decline, certainly a decline as a percentage of the overall population. COVID came and it exploded. So a industry that prepared for or tried to get more hunters for 30 years and was unsuccessful was not prepared when they actually did get more hunters. So license quantities, competition for licenses probably is the number one thing that we hear. We certainly do hear about crowding at trailheads, things like that. I don't know if there's an immediate and short-term solution to number of hunters at trailheads, etc., other than dispersing elk and deer and other big game more, having more opportunity for them in more places. I think, going back to some of what we talked about, I don't know that northwest of me here, there's a lot of crowding at trailheads because all the elk are down in the bottom. Yeah. So I'm not sure that's an issue. I think the number one thing we've heard mostly is just the tags, the allocations. We're like, I'll get probably beat up for this, but I'm a native Montanan. I'm born and raised here. My father was born and raised here. I believe as a Montanan, we're slightly spoiled. I can hunt elk and deer with a bow for 5 weeks. I can put it away the next week, drag out my rifle and do the same thing for another 5 weeks. That's a spoils of hunting opportunity. In fact, now with shoulder seasons, I think I can start in August and finish in February. Am I like, so if you're saying I have to lose a week, is the sky falling? Is it the end of the world? Like, I think maybe if we all took a deep breath and took more of a realistic picture of what's really available and what our opportunities are, I think those are discussions we have to have, and we have to have them I think to your point, Corey, we're better off 10 of us standing together to ensure the right that we have to hunt and enjoy these lands with a rifle or bow in our hand. Not everybody supports that. So having some people in a group that do support it and can influence the outcomes in the future is in our favor. Maybe we don't all need to hunt for 6 months out of the year, everyone, all the time, with unlimited access to everything. Maybe we can have some conversations about some middle ground. And again, I'm going to get slayed for that.
No, and it is. We don't want to give up anything. I don't want to give up anything because we've fought to protect it, and if we feel like if we give up a little bit, then what's next. But I think there does have to be a broader understanding of what we do have and what's at stake. If at least have that conversation.
Yeah, and some of it's the experience you're pursuing. If I go hit a trailhead up outside of here a little bit, and I get back in, I set up, and I rip off a bugle, and I get 6 human responses, it's a little bit deflating.
Yeah.
And I think it's 100%. I understand people saying that sucks. There were 4 pickups down there. there's 6 guys in this drainage, there's 2 elk, we're on top of each other. I mean, again, as a community, I think we have to have the conversation about what is a better outcome. Like, how do we manage this? You can't just put it all on the states. We're part owners. We have to show up and say, you know what? Here's an idea I have, and someone else come up with an idea. This is, not sure if all of your listeners remember, but not so many decades ago, this is how problems were solved. People talked about it as adults, put their things on the table, and everybody gave up something for a better outcome, for the whole of it. I think we always have to be guided by what's best for the resource. And then secondary to that, can we all just come and have a conversation, air it out, and then maybe everybody concede a little bit? That doesn't happen anymore. It's guns
all
and
or
knives,
nothing.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Well,
think the boom in the hunting interest, population, tag, license sales is a fad? Do you think it'll level
You
back out?
know, that I do at some level. I do think we're seeing more of what they reference as adult onset hunters. I think there is a growing, and again, COVID challenged a lot of things. How much, people worried about the grocery store. I didn't worry about the grocery store. I have a freezer full of meat. I think people do have this want or understanding, want to know where their food comes from. We're seeing all kinds of these movements and things within. Are they fads? Maybe, probably. People that grew up in it and gets in their blood, they'll never leave it.
Yeah.
Those are the ones we see stick with it forever. I think there are people that will come into it, maybe not at the same pace, Corey, but we're also a growing population. There's more and more people. There's more and more people connected. And listen, it's not just hunting.
Yeah.
It's 4th of July weekend. Everything I grew up around, there will be multiple cars at every trailhead, everywhere. Like, I'm gonna go. I saw the Flathead, there was some huckleberries, couple gallons for sale. So somewhere there's some ripe huckleberries. Now, I've been here long enough, I know where I'm going to go to find them. But inevitably, there's probably 3 people there right now picking ones that aren't even ripe yet.
Yep.
There is more pressure than ever. We're gonna have to figure it out.
Yeah. And you hear that from skiers and golfers. I mean,
Yep.
I used to be able to get a tee time any Tuesday morning. Now I'm on a wait list for two. It's like, so we're hearing that everywhere. But this is going to age me a little bit. But I look at when I first joined the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation in the 1980s, late 80s, I was living in Nevada at the time. The statewide management plan called for 3,000 elk in Nevada. Now they have 14,000 elk.
Yep.
I moved to Montana in 1991. We had 90,000 elk. Now we have 150,000 elk. The first time I applied for an elk tag in Wyoming, they had 80,000 elk. Now they got 110 to 120,000 elk. So if we want to talk scorecards, that's the scorecard for me that matters and that I'm really measuring by. And for people who don't have that arc of time to, I guess I'll call it age, to have that perspective, these are the good old days. And so when they come to me and complain, I didn't draw my special tag this year, I'm like, you know what? When I moved to Montana, you had to draw a cow tag.
Right.
There was none of this cow tags, shoulder seasons. We are living almost an embarrassment of riches relative to what it used to be. And I want people to kind of think of that. It gives some perspective to that. I remember when I drew a cow tag, it was my 5th year. I finally drew a cow tag. And now that unit, I can go there. I can shoot a cow if I knew someone in the shoulder season. I can go there. Archery's any elk now in that unit. And the number, there's like 2 weeks. I think the first 2 weeks are cows also on your general tag, and then you can come back for a later shoulder season.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm a little bit numb to going through that process and just seeing the improvement that has been made to elk numbers in this country and the places I live and the places I apply to. Maybe that makes me a little bit numb to some of the complaints of, oh, I didn't draw my tag last this year. Well, I went 5 years without drawing a cow tag. It's like let's have a little context there. But I get it. A lot of people, they jumped into this in the glory days of whenever it is in their state, and so that's what their expectation is. And we still have a lot of opportunity for elk hunting that we would have never had if not for the donors, the members, the staff, and the volunteers of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. I don't think it's by accident that in 1984 there were 550,000 elk on this continent, and now there's almost 1.2 million elk. Show me any other species that over this time, when mule deer have plummeted, when pronghorn are going down, when moose are going down, when sheep are going down, tell me one other species that has more than doubled in the last 40 years. And so that's kind of my score sheet of how good the elk foundation
You said
has
it better
been.
than I can. Well stated.
Oh, and we're so lucky. I think Corey and I both feel this. Our listeners, they're all bought in for the most part. I mean, most everybody's a big supporter of the Elk Foundation, and they realize the good work that you guys do. And they're willing to make calls. They're willing to show up at volunteer events. They're willing to be at a banquet and do a fundraiser or spend some money. And so we need to keep finding more of them. And if somebody says, well, dang, that's just one more hunter out in the woods. Well, if that's one of those hunters who's an advocate, who puts their time, their money, and their talent towards the cause of elk, those are the kind of hunters I want out in the woods.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. People have asked me over the years, probably the number one question and consistency I've gotten is like, where did the Elk Foundation's success come from? And there's one quote from my mother that I love, and that was, I think it was successful in despite of us. Which, if you know my mother, that is quintessential to her. But I think when I look at what you just said, like the volunteers that show up, the members that speak out, there's something about elk that brings something else out in people. I think, and the people that it attracted, the donors, the members, all of it, the people that came to it and stick with it and are still with it. I think if you've ever hunted elk, if you ever have really been into it, the obligation that creates in you to do something to benefit and give back is beyond any other species I know. I think that elk just command something different from us.
Yeah.
So it isn't anything, to me, that's the piece of it that's the most, that I can put the finger on, that's the most consistent. It's just, and Corey knows it as well as anyone, when you're 15 feet away and it's full on bugle in your face, like if you don't become compelled to say, you know what, I'm going to give back something because that's the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life, then I think you're probably not going to be a member of ours anyway.
Yeah. No, and I've mentioned it several times, but when we did the linguist film, Will Primos said, if you teach somebody to love something, they're going to protect it. And that is just, it stuck with me that, we've got to teach people to love it. And what you just said, a bull elk at 15 yards screaming in your face, that gets in your blood and it keeps you up at night. And, you crave that next experience like that.
Well, yeah, without question. And it digs a little deeper than a duck, than some other species. And I have no disrespect to any of them. I think they do great work, but our Army has that in their blood. And that's what separates us, I think, from others. It just is that simple.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many of the 12,000 volunteers I've met of RMEF, a lot of them. And I've not met one of them that wasn't exactly as you described, Steve. They are just all in it, not for themselves, but for something they feel that is even bigger.
Yeah.
And it's fun to hang out with those people. I have so much fun at events and just going where I know there's going to be volunteers. They're the core of, if you want to have a call to action or raise the flag if we need help, there's 12,000 people who are probably going to drop what they're doing to show up.
Yeah, without question.
And how do we double that to get it to 24,000 people? I mean, and I think there's an evolution of engagement there. Send in
Yeah,
your $35. That's the bare minimum. Everybody
yeah,
who has an elk tag in their pocket should be sending in $35. From there, you can take it to the next level. You can go to a banquet. You can, that money goes back into the revenue stream. You can become a corporate sponsor, a life member, all these different options. But I think the piece that a lot of people are missing out on is that volunteer opportunity to put their boot on the ground and go out and actually do something to support the Elk Foundation. Paying is great, but
yeah.
volunteer on the ground is pretty awesome too.
Yeah.
I think Monday we launch a new website. Everybody go on Monday. It'll be all new.
Really?
Really? The
I
new
think Reza might kill me for that, but I think yeah.
Really, RMEF.org. So this
Yeah.
podcast is going to drop on July 21st. So that's going to give
there you
you exactly 2 weeks to work out the kinks of the new
Yeah.
RMEF.org.
So
Perfect.
when our 7 listeners come, it's not going to crash your website.
Corey, you keep saying that. You know how many people come up to me and say, "I'm listener number 4."
Yep.
Not 7 at once. Let's. I forgot this thing goes. Yeah. So when this drops, go to the new website. This has been in the works for quite some time. The business side of things, we just went through an ERP integration. If anyone's ever been through that, I would rather have a couple more root canals before we ever take on that. I'm not an IT person. I just know what it does on the back end and how it impacts us when it's not working. And it's been an interesting first 6 months of the year, but the bow is planed out now a little bit. We've had a lot of small fires this first part of the year, but it's just technology, and part of running businesses now is updating those technologies in grand ways, and been tough. If any members suffered a missed premium or any hiccups, please know it was everything to do with IT. It wasn't our side.
Yeah, Rod's not here to protect himself.
That's right.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for taking the time. I know it's a beautiful week in Montana. You picked a great week for a vacation, and you were kind enough to let Corey and I impose on that.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Time.
Thank you guys for having me. I always appreciate visiting with you, and hopefully Corey only left once or twice from boredom. So it wasn't all bad. But no, I appreciate it. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for all you do, and your leadership there is second to none. So we're blessed to have you on there. And if people recognize a familiar last name, there's a reason there. Steve's been involved and seen the passion since 1984.
I was focused on other things at 14, but I was there when it came to fruition. It's been an honor and a blessing to be a part of it, and just serve a small role within it. But it's just to see what it's accomplished is for just some yokels from Libby in Troy could never have fathomed what it is. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I have seen you in all kinds of different roles at the Elk Foundation, Steve. I think you were working in the distribution center while going
visitor
to
center.
Or something. Yeah.
Started the visitor center.
Yeah, and then I remember when you were my regional director here in Bozeman. That was what, in the late 90s?
Late 90s, early 2000s. I was in Canada and South Dakota before that. I actually started in the field working in Canada. I covered Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Northwest Ontario. I called it North Central North America. I think I put 65,000 work miles on my first year.
Wow.
Lived in Plentywood, Montana, and covered that part of North America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Like you and like so many other great employees at the Elk Foundation, I can say this, having worked on that board and seeing the quality of people there, how long they stay there. The Elk Foundation has a staff that is top of the shelf in the conservation space, and glad you're still there, being one of them, Steve.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would not put me on that rung. We have a lot of great staff for sure that's been there a long time, and a lot of new staff that are just as passionate in bringing a new perspective. But again, to me, it's been a real honor to be able to work there.
Yeah. Well, folks, rmef.org, that new website is up and running when you hear this. And you ought to become a member. And if you do, Corey will take you on a fully guided fishing trip.
You don't want to go fishing with me. That is not a sales pitch.
All right, that was false
Uh,
statement on my part. That was just my best head fake for a marketing scheme.
Well, I'll give my pitch then. We were driving home from the Total Archery Challenge, and it was about a 12-hour drive, and my wife asked a question. Sam, my youngest son, was with us, and she said, if you could go back in time, what year would you go to? And I thought about it for a bit, and I said 1988. And she said, why 1988? And I said, because I was only 13 years old, but I can still remember all the elk that were bugling everywhere on public land back then. I think that was
Yeah.
the heyday of it. And then as I drove, we drove into 2 in the morning trying to find a stinking hotel. There wasn't a single hotel from Bozeman to Missoula. We had to stay at the Super 8 University in Missoula, Steve, which that's as desperate as it
Yeah.
gets. But as I was driving and everybody else was asleep, I thought, what would it take so that I could say, I want to go to tomorrow? I want tomorrow to be the
Yeah.
heyday. And I think the Elk Foundation is the platform that's going to help us get there. So if you're hoping that tomorrow is the heyday of elk hunting, you need to be a member.
I don't think we can be any better than that pitch, Corey.
No, that's good.
Folks,
Really good.
thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.